When the jury wrapped up their closing arguments, the judge dismissed them for the day. It was already 4 p.m., so they were sent back to their hotel, where they'd been sequestered during this grueling 2-week trial, the culmination of a year-long investigation. The defendant was escorted back to the Tarrant County Correctional Center in Fort Worth, and nothing else would move forward until the jury reconvened on Monday. As for me, I decided to head back to my room at the Hilton Garden Inn in downtown Dallas. On the way, I stopped at a bar for a cold beer and a quick bite. I just polished off my burger and was halfway through the beer when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, cowboy, buy a girl a drink?" I turned, curious, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. "Emily? Emily Parker? Is that really you?" She smiled, the same mischievous grin I remembered from high school. "Yeah, it's me," she said. I waved her over, and she slid into the seat across from me. I flagged the waitress and turned back to her. "How long has it been?" 16, 17 years? 17, she confirmed. Emily had been one of my closest friends back in high school, part of our tight-knit group with Mike Reynolds and Lisa Montgomery. The four of us were inseparable, the Four Musketeers, until her dad got a job in Austin during our senior year. After that, she vanished from my life. "So, how've you been?" I asked. "I'm doing all right," she said. "Went to UT, graduated, got married, got divorced, and now I'm working as a reporter for the Austin Statesman." "Wow, what happened?" I asked, surprised. She shrugged like it didn't bother her anymore. "I was married, but apparently he wasn't. After I caught him cheating 3 times, I kicked him to the curb. Last I heard, he's managing a McDonald's in Beaumont." "Damn, I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely feeling for her. "It's fine," she said. "What about you? How's life treating you?" Honestly, considering the last 16 years of my life were a complete lie, I guess I'm holding up okay. "At least you've got kids," she said, trying to brighten the mood. "Yeah, legally they're mine," I muttered, bitterness creeping into my voice. She gave me a soft smile. "You may not be their biological father, but you're their dad in every way that counts. Don't sell yourself short." I nodded, appreciating her sentiment, but it didn't do much to ease the sting. Emily leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "Look, I need to tell you something." "What's that?" I asked, curious but wary. "Every reporter out there wants your story," she said. "I want to be the one to tell it, if you'll let me. I know trust might be an issue, but no one knows you like I do. I can write it in a way that respects you. We can even sign a contract. You'll have full approval over everything before it goes to print." My editor already gave the green light. She had a point. Reporters from every major outlet had been hounding me for weeks. The constant attention was suffocating. Something about Emily, though, felt safe. Like I could actually trust her. "All right, Emily," I said. "You've got a deal. How do we start?" "We can do it here, your hotel, or mine," she said. I chuckled. "How about a road trip instead? I've been wanting to visit the old neighborhood. It's only a couple of hours away. Since the jury's not deliberating until Monday, we've got the weekend to kill. We can head back, and I'll show you where everything happened. You can talk to my kids, my parents, if you want." Her eyes lit up. "I like the sound of that." "Great. Where are you staying?" "The Hilton, just around the corner," she said. "Same here," I replied. "Let's grab what we need and meet at my truck. You can't miss it, a big blue cab." "Still the same Jack," she teased, grinning. "Always the guy with the biggest truck." "Give me half an hour to change and pack," I said. By the time we hit the road, the sun was already dipping below the horizon, which was fine by me. I never liked driving in bright sunlight. Emily had changed into a crisp denim skirt and a white blouse, looking every bit as stunning as she had in high school. I couldn't help but notice her legs, and she caught me staring. "I know what you're thinking, cowboy," she said, a playful smirk tugging at her lips. "Do you?" I asked, feigning innocence. "You're wondering why you didn't hook up with me instead of Lisa," she said, raising an eyebrow. I laughed, shaking my head. "Is that your reporter's instinct talking?" "No," she said, smiling slyly. "It's the way you're looking at my legs, same as you did in high school." "Legs like that are hard to forget," I said, letting out a laugh. Emily smiled, pulling a small tape recorder from her bag. "So, is there a Mr. Wright waiting for you back in Austin?" I asked. She shook her head with a slight grin. "Not since my divorce. I've had trust issues with men, and honestly, I haven't found anyone worth my time." "That's a shame," I replied, though I doubted my sympathy sounded genuine. She chuckled softly. "Somehow, I don't think you're all that sorry." "Damn those reporter instincts," I muttered, shaking my head. "Shall we get started on this interview?" she asked, placing the recorder on the dashboard. "Sure thing," I said, sipping my coffee. "As you know," I began, "back in high school, it was me, Mike, and Lisa after you moved away. We were a tight trio, but after graduation, things changed. I proposed to Lisa, and she said yes. Mike and I enlisted in the Marines together, but we ended up taking different paths. He went into infantry, and I trained in computer electronics. Mike didn't last long, though. A knee injury got him medically discharged. His dad, being a county commissioner, pulled some strings to get him a job with the sheriff's department. That explains how he got into local politics," Emily said, nodding thoughtfully. "Exactly. Meanwhile, I stayed in the Marines and finished my service. I came home, married Lisa, and Mike was my best man. Later, I found out he was also Lisa's, let's just say, her other best man." Emily winced, visibly disgusted. "What a snake. I can't believe he'd do that to you." 9 months later, Ethan was born. A year after that, I was sent to Okinawa for a year-long tour. Lisa stayed behind with Ethan in the house I'd inherited. When I got back, we moved to Camp Lejeune, and that's where Sophia was born. Lisa had a rough pregnancy and convinced me to get a vasectomy. She told me it could be reversed if we ever wanted more kids, but now I realize she just didn't want me getting her pregnant anymore. "Didn't you notice anything odd about the kids when they were born?" Emily asked, leaning forward. "It's a fair question," I admitted. "But Mike and I looked pretty similar. Same hair color, eye color, even down to our earlobes. When the kids were little, they looked enough like me to pass. Plus, they had Lisa's eyes and nose. It wasn't until they got older that I started noticing features that were undeniably Mike's." I paused, taking another sip of my coffee. "I've got baby pictures that'll make it clear when we get to my place." "So, what happened after the Marines?" she asked. "I came home for good, started working at my dad's computer store, and traveled a lot for business. Lisa didn't seem to mind. In fact, she seemed to prefer it. I thought it gave her some breathing room, but really, it just gave her more time to sneak around with Mike. They were careful, though. I didn't suspect a thing at the time." Emily frowned, her expression darkening. "Wait, are you saying they actually, in your bed?" "Yeah," I said bitterly. "All the time. That's why I burned the bed and mattress after she was shot." "I don't blame you," she said firmly. "That wasn't all," I added, the anger still fresh in my voice. "I also torched the couch and Mike's favorite chair. And Lisa's wedding dress? That went up in flames too." "Mike was a regular guest in your house?" Emily asked, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "He even had his own chair," I said, shaking my head. "At the time, I thought he was just being a good friend. He'd come over after church, watch the game with me, and usually fall asleep in that chair. The kids called him Uncle Mike. Lisa insisted on it, and it always rubbed me the wrong way. Now I know why." I glanced at her coffee cup. "Need a refill? How about a pit stop?" Emily nodded, turning off the recorder. "I could use a smoke break, too." We pulled off at the next exit, and after a quick break, we were back on the road. "You really didn't suspect anything was going on?" she asked, placing the recorder back on the dashboard. "No," I said. "Lisa never disrespected me to my face, and they were careful. There wasn't even a hint of it when I was home." "When did you figure it out?" "About a year ago," I said. "I was in Los Angeles for a month-long training course. While I was gone, Lisa and the kids kept in touch through emails and phone calls. One weekend, Ethan sent me a photo from a fishing trip he went on with Lisa and Mike. Here, let me show you." I handed her my phone. Emily studied the image carefully. "Ethan and Mike. They look identical, even the dimples." "Exactly," I said. "And look at Lisa's hand. What do you see?" Emily zoomed in. "She's not wearing her rings." "Right. And guess where those rings were?" I asked, pulling up another photo on my phone. Her eyes widened. Is that an ashtray? Yep, and those cigarette butts? They're Mike's. That ashtray was on my nightstand, which means Mike had been in my bed. Emily's face twisted in disgust, tears welling in her eyes. How could she do that to you? Sophia found the rings while helping my mom clean the house. She was upset and took a picture for me. Did Lisa ever find out Sophia knew? No, I said. I told Sophia to keep quiet and mail me the rings. Meanwhile, Lisa was in a panic, tearing the house apart looking for them. She even had Mike help. What did you do? Emily asked, her voice low. When I got home, Lisa was crying about losing her grandmother's ring. I acted concerned, asked all the usual questions, then pulled the rings out of my pocket. She was stunned. When she asked how I got them, I told her a trusted friend mailed them to me. I didn't mention Sophia. I wanted to protect her. And what did Lisa do? She started bawling, swearing up and down that she loved me. That's when I knew it was over. I didn't have solid proof of the affair yet, but I had enough suspicions to start digging. My first step was to get DNA tests on the kids. I didn't wait long to confirm my suspicions. I bought motion-activated cameras, audio recorders, and bugged our cell phones. Everything recorded to a home server and backed up to the cloud. I set it all up while Lisa was out shopping. The DNA test was easy. One of my Dallas clients ran a paternity lab. I swabbed the kids and myself, asking them to keep it from their mom. On Sunday, Mike fell asleep in his usual chair after church, and I swabbed him too. A week later, the results arrived. 99.9% probability Mike is the father of both kids, the report read. 16 years of betrayal stared back at me. Emily was horrified. You really had no idea? Not a clue, I said. She never gave me a reason to doubt her. Everything seemed normal. The surveillance started paying off quickly. A week after I set up the cameras, I was in Oklahoma City, and the kids were with my parents. Lisa was alone and called Mike over. That night, I logged into the server from my hotel and saw them together in our bed. But worse than seeing them was hearing what they said. What did they say? Emily asked, leaning forward. Hold on, I said, tightening my grip on the wheel. The road was dark, no guardrails, and we were near where Mike's gang used to operate. Most of them were locked up, but I didn't take chances. I flicked on the high beams, light bar, and police scanner before pulling my pistol from the glove box. The road stretched silent until we reached my house. Emily spotted a DSS car in the driveway. Who's that? She asked. Defense, I said. They've been watching the place since Mike's arrest. His buddies tried to burn it down, but DSS stopped them. Even with most of them in jail, we're not taking chances. We parked in the garage and approached the patrol car. The officer stepped out. Jack Thompson, thought you were still in Dallas. Trial's with the jury now, I said, shaking his hand. This is Emily Parker, a reporter from Austin. The officer tipped his hat to Emily. Ma'am, things have been quiet since the Rangers cleaned up the last gang. My replacement will be here soon. Thanks, I said, shaking his hand again. Stay safe. You too, he replied as we headed inside. I gave Emily a quick tour of the house. It was built in 1866 by William Bryan Thompson after the Civil War, I explained. It's been remodeled and expanded over the years, but you can still see traces of the original structure. Now, it had 5 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and a wraparound porch. I suggested Emily take the master bedroom, and I'd use the futon in my den. Nonsense, she said with a grin. The bed's big enough for both of us. We're adults. That caught me off guard, but I agreed. She smiled and gestured downstairs. You've got a story to tell, so let's get to it. Let me call the kids first, I said. I rang my parents' house, spoke to my dad, and then talked to the kids. They were excited to meet Emily, and we planned lunch for the next day. Grabbing a stack of DVDs from my study, I returned to the living room. These should help, I said, placing them on the table. Emily's eyes widened. How many videos do you have? Plenty, I said. Footage from home, my office, photos, documents, and audio recordings. It's all here, with backups. I inserted a DVD into the player. This one confirmed everything. It's graphic, though. I'm ready, she said firmly. The video started with Lisa entering the bedroom, Mike following behind her. Emily flinched as Lisa took off her wedding rings and dropped them into the ashtray on my nightstand. Mike stubbed out his cigarette on the rings, smirking. "To hell with him and his great-grandmother's ring," Lisa said. Mike laughed. Emily wiped at her eyes as they began undressing. I fast-forwarded through the worst parts. "It takes about an hour," I said. "The pillow talk afterward is where it all unravels." "Thank you for showing me this," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Hearing about it is one thing, but seeing it." On the screen, Lisa and Mike lay on their backs, smoking. Lisa turned to him. "I'm pregnant again, baby. Looks like you're going to be a daddy." Mike frowned. "Damn it, didn't you take your pills?" "I missed a day or two," she replied. "Why can't you use something else?" he snapped. "You know I hate that stuff," she said. "And I can't have another feticide. I've had 3 already. The last one almost killed me. Besides, Jack had a vasectomy. It was your idea?" Mike sat up, irritated. "So what now?" "I want to marry you and leave," Lisa said quietly. "Jack's figured us out anyway." Mike snorted. "I'm not the marrying type. Jack works, pays the bills, and I get what I want. Don't worry about him. He's so stupid we could do this in front of him, and he wouldn't notice." Lisa's voice dropped. "Maybe you can arrange an accident." Mike shook his head. "Taking out illegals is one thing. No one misses them. But a respected guy like Jack? That's different." "Then find another way," she said. "People die driving down Indian Trail all the time," Mike said on the video, his tone cold and calculating. "Maybe we do something like that, but not yet. We could find something to incapacitate him gradually, like poison. Let's plan this carefully. Once the kids are out of the house, you can collect his insurance and maybe take over part of his business." Lisa nodded, hanging on his every word. "Okay, baby. I'll do it. You're the man," she said, kissing him deeply. Then, like the betrayal wasn't enough, she added with a sly grin, "Now, let's get back to it." I couldn't stomach watching more and paused the video. Emily sat beside me, shaking her head in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. "I hate her," she said, her voice trembling. "And you lived with her for 17 years? How? Please tell me you went to a lawyer after this." "I did," I said. "Let me explain. I made an appointment with Mark Peterson, the family lawyer we'd used for years. He'd known us since I married Lisa, and I hoped he'd know what to do. When I showed him the DNA results and the video, he looked grim. "Jack," Mark began, "I won't sugarcoat this. Texas is a community property state, but infidelity can affect how property and alimony are divided. This evidence might help, but there's a problem." "What problem?" I asked, already feeling my frustration build. "Mike Reynolds runs this county," Mark explained. "He owns the sheriff's department, has judges in his pocket, and controls almost every aspect of local government. Divorce cases have to be filed in the county where you've lived for at least 90 days. No judge here will take this case fairly. Plus, Lisa's pregnancy complicates things. Texas courts won't finalize a divorce until the baby is born, no matter who the father is." "Unbelievable," I muttered. "That's not all," Mark continued. "Mike made it clear to me that if you try to divorce Lisa, I have to inform him. He essentially forced me to break attorney-client privilege." "You're saying Mike threatened you?" Mark nodded, his hands shaking slightly. "Yes. And Jack, I can't risk ending up dead on Indian Trail. I have a family to think about. I'm sorry, but I can't represent you anymore." I stared at him for a moment before nodding. "I get it. You're fired. I'll need all my files now." Mark gestured to 2 boxes by the door. "I anticipated this. Everything's ready. Take this list too, contacts who can help you. There are authorities interested in Mike's activities." "I'm sorry, Jack." We carried the boxes to my truck. "Call those people," Mark urged. "They'll take this seriously. Maybe this can be resolved safely." I shook his hand. "Thanks, Mark. Take care of yourself." Back at my office, I reviewed Mark's list. It included a senior family law attorney, a state's attorney, and a Texas Ranger officer, all based in Dallas. I called each one and scheduled appointments for the following day. Then I called my dad to explain the situation and let him know I'd fired Mark. My father's tone shifted when I showed him the DNA results and video evidence. Jesus, Jack, he muttered. I always knew Mike was trouble, but not like this. You need to get the kids out of that house immediately. There's no telling what they'll do if they feel cornered. I agree, I said. Dad had a plan. When are your appointments in Dallas? Tomorrow, I replied. Good. Tell Lisa you're heading to Phoenix for a survey and might be gone for a few days. I'll pack up the kids and bring them to our place. That should keep them safe. Thanks, Dad. But I need to tell the kids the truth. They deserve to know what's happening. We'll support you, son, he said firmly. I called Ethan first and explained that he and Sophia would be staying with their grandparents for a while. What's going on, Dad? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I'll explain later, I said. Just make sure you and Sophia are home right after school. Grandpa will pick you up. Okay, Dad. Love you. Love you too, son. Minutes later, my secretary buzzed me. Jack, Mike Reynolds is here to see you. I grabbed my pistol, placed it on the desk, turned on the VCR to record, and alerted my dad. Mike walked in like he owned the place, his swagger infuriating. He spotted the gun immediately. Not bad, he said with a smirk. Didn't know computer geeks carried weapons. What do you want, Mike? I asked, my tone sharp. I know you saw Mark Peterson today, he said. So what? I replied evenly. If you're thinking of divorcing Lisa, forget it, Mike sneered. I won't let you drag me through court. Why, Mike? I asked. I thought we were friends. How long has this been going on? Since prom night, Mike said, his grin widening. Lisa and I started then, and kept it up whenever you were away. Even on your wedding day, I was with her. When you went to Okinawa, we were together almost every night. Lisa had an abortion 6 months later. It was my idea to make her convince you to get a vasectomy. We didn't want your kids. We've used your insurance for multiple abortions. And now what? I asked, my anger barely contained. Now that you know, Mike said, leaning closer, I'll come by whenever I want. You'll do as I say, or I'll make sure something happens to your kids. You touch my kids, and I'll put you down like a dog, I said, my voice cold. Mike snorted. You think you're in control? I own this county, Jack, the sheriff, the judges, all of it. Play along, and you'll be fine. Step out of line, and it's over for you and your family. Would you really hurt your own children? I asked, disgusted. Grow up, Jack, he said. I'll see you around. He left, and I stopped the tape. I burned it to a DVD, made copies, and sent them to my dad and my contacts in Dallas. Then I called my father. Dad, check your mail. Mike just threatened me and the kids. We need to move now. Understood, Dad said. I'll call the school. Ethan will pick up Sophia, and they'll come straight to our house. Meet me there after your appointments. It's time to evict your wife. I agreed with my dad's plan and called the school. I told them neither Lisa nor Mike Reynolds was allowed to pick up the children or enter the building. It's a matter of life and end of life, I said firmly. I instructed the school to release the kids immediately. Next, I called Ethan. Pick up Sophia and go straight to your grandfather's house, I said. No questions asked. Why, Dad? What's going on? I'll explain later, I said. Do not contact your mother or Mike. It's crucial. Do you understand? Yeah, Dad. I got it, he said, concern evident in his voice. I grabbed my weapon and the DVD, locked the office, and headed home. 15 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway. Lisa's car was parked out front, but Mike's truck was absent. My heart pounded as I entered the house, hand resting on my holstered pistol. Lisa was coming down the stairs. Jack, you're home early, she said, her voice saccharine. Did something happen? Is Mike here? I asked directly. Why would Mike be here? She replied, feigning confusion. You know why, I snapped. Maybe for an afternoon hookup, or to plan my murder. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, Jack. I'm so sorry. Save it, I interrupted, walking to the DVD player. I inserted the disc and pressed play. She stood in stunned silence as Mike's threats and admissions filled the room. Her face turned pale. Jack, it's not what you think. We can work this out. Work this out, I said, furious. You betrayed me, denied me children, and plotted to kill me. Pack your things and get out. I grabbed her hand, yanked off my grandmother's ring, and threw my wedding ring at her. Eat it, cow. Jack, please don't do this, she begged, tears streaming down her face. You're a sorry excuse for a wife, I said coldly. Now get out. I hurled her purse at her, and she rushed to the door. Outside, she stopped by her car, sniffling. Where will I go? I don't care, I said. Go to Mike, your mother, or straight to hell. Just then, 2 vehicles pulled into the driveway. My father's truck and, behind it, Mike's. Lisa's tears vanished, replaced by a smug smirk. Now we'll see who has to go, she said. Dad got out of his truck, his rifle in hand. What are you doing, Thompson? Mike shouted. I'm enforcing a restraining order, Dad said. What restraining order? The one keeping you and Lisa 500 feet from my family and property, Dad replied coolly. Mike stopped moving as 2 state troopers pulled in behind him. 4 officers stepped out with pistols drawn. Mr. Thompson, we'll handle this, one officer said. Dad lowered his rifle. The officer handed Mike a document. This restraining order bars you from coming near the Thompson family or property. Do you understand? Mike glared but stayed quiet. The officer turned to Lisa. Mrs. Thompson, you're served as well. Violating this will lead to arrest. Do you understand? Yes, she muttered. Officer, I said, stepping forward. There's more. You'll want to see this. I hit play on the DVD, letting Mike's threats and Lisa's complicity speak for themselves. The officer's face hardened, and he pulled out handcuffs. Mrs. Thompson, you're under arrest. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. You can't do this, she yelled. Ignoring her protests, the officer cuffed her and read her rights. Another officer arrested Mike, who exploded in anger. Do you know who I am? He roared. We do, the officer replied dryly. And we don't care. You'll pay for this, Mike shouted. The chaos caught the attention of a local news van that pulled up in time to record the arrests. A reporter approached as Mike was shoved into a patrol car. Mr. Thompson, why was Commissioner Reynolds arrested? The reporter asked. Because making death threats is a crime, even for politicians and their married girlfriends, I said bluntly. Now, I need to focus on my kids. My dad and I walked away, leaving the reporter speechless. Mike's reputation took a massive hit, and it wouldn't recover. At my parents' house, I sat down with Ethan and Sophia to explain everything. Telling them that Uncle Mike was their biological father was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. They struggled to process it, but the DNA results made the truth unavoidable. I don't care what that paper says, Sophia said, her voice fierce. You're my dad, and you always will be. Same here, Ethan added. I hugged them both tightly, proud of their strength. We cried together, but I knew we'd get through it. After saying goodbye, I returned to my house, packed for a few days, and drove to Dallas. And that's when you found out how bad it really was? Emily asked, cutting into my thoughts. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of coffee. The next day, I met with James Harrison, a renowned Dallas attorney. He'd arranged a meeting with the others Mark had recommended. When I arrived, they were all waiting. Sorry to spring this on you, Mr. Thompson, James said. After reviewing the video, we thought it best to meet together. I nodded, appreciating their urgency. Let's get to work, I said. David Brooks, a prosecutor from the state's attorney's office, led the meeting. Mr. Thompson, he began, I'm sorry for what you've been through. We've compiled substantial evidence against Mike Reynolds, illegal pills, weapons trafficking, human trafficking, and 6 homicides. Your wife is implicated too, particularly in prostitution. The threats against you forced us to act quickly. Tom Foster, a Texas Rangers captain, outlined the steps they'd taken. The sheriff's department is compromised, so we've temporarily replaced them with Rangers and DSS officers. The situation is critical. James Harrison, my attorney, turned the conversation to my divorce. We'll push for an annulment based on your wife's criminal activity and deception. If that doesn't work, we'll file for infidelity and mental cruelty. With the evidence you've provided, I'm confident you'll retain your assets and custody of your children, if you want it. For over an hour, we discussed strategies. Before we left, James handed me a DVD. This contains additional footage of your wife's actions. Some of it involves sheriff's deputies. It's critical evidence. David concluded somberly. We're seeking the harshest sentence for Mike Reynolds, judicial execution. Your wife may face life without parole. Mr. Thompson, your lives are still in danger. Be vigilant and call us immediately if anything seems suspicious. I nodded. I hear you. We shook hands and parted ways. On the drive home, my mind spun. Mike, my supposed best friend, was involved in drugs, weapons, and murder, while my wife had played a role in trafficking and worse. How had I been blind to this for 17 years? My phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. Ethan's voice was frantic. Dad, come home now. What's going on? I asked. Just come home, he said, hanging up abruptly. I raced back, fear gripping me. When I arrived, flashing lights filled the street. Ambulances and police cars surrounded my house. I rushed to the door just as paramedics wheeled out a gurney. One paramedic paused and pulled back the sheet, revealing Lisa's lifeless face. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, he said. She's gone. I didn't feel much. Inside, I found Mike on another gurney, alive but injured. His left shoulder was shattered. My kids and father stood off to the side, unharmed. I rushed to hug them. What happened? I asked. Dad explained, his voice steady but shaken. We came to pick up a few things. Mike and Lisa showed up. Sophia and Lisa got into a fight, and Mike pulled a weapon. I walked in with my rifle just as Mike aimed it. Lisa tried to stop him, and he accidentally shot her. I shot Mike in the shoulder and called emergency services. Ethan called you right after. I nodded. It's okay, Dad. You did the right thing. I checked the security footage and showed it to a responding officer who made a copy. Do you have that video? Emily asked later. Yes, I said, pulling a disc from the stack and putting it in the DVD player. The footage showed Lisa and Mike entering the house, confronting Sophia. What are you doing here? Sophia asked. You should be in jail. We bailed out, Lisa replied smugly. You're coming with us. I'm not going anywhere with you, Sophia said, her voice defiant. Leave now. Lisa grabbed her wrist. You're coming with us, she insisted. Sophia pulled away. No way. I hate you, she shouted. Lisa slapped her hard. Yes, you are. I have a room for you in Abilene. Sophia slapped her back, breaking free. That's not happening, she yelled. Mike grinned menacingly. The boys will like you, he said, pulling a weapon. Sophia screamed for help as Lisa tried to calm Mike. Wait, we agreed not to do this here. Let's take them to Indian Trail. No, Mike said coldly. It ends here. A struggle ensued, followed by 2 gunshots, Mike's weapon, then Dad's rifle. I paused the DVD. That's when Ethan called me, I said. Emily wiped her tears. Your dad saved her life, she said. I stood, exhausted. I'm done for the day. I need some air. Emily followed me out to the back porch. We sat silently with our coffee, the night pressing in around us. After a while, Emily spoke. I forgot how dark and quiet it is out here, she said softly. I'm used to the city. She looked at me, her voice gentle but firm. Jack, you need to process this before it consumes you. Easier said than done, I replied. How do you move on from the woman you loved, lying to you for years? My kids aren't even mine. Emily's expression softened. I understand a little. My husband was a serial cheater. But not everyone is like that. Yeah, I know, I said quietly. Emily hugged me. I'm here for you, Jack. Always. Thank you, I said. I often wish we had met back in high school. She smiled. I feel the same. If my dad hadn't transferred to Austin, maybe we would have. I was even jealous of Lisa back then. Really? I asked, surprised. Yeah, but you were with her. I had my doubts about Mike, though. He told me he wasn't the type to get attached. Well, no point crying over it now, I said. If we'd been together, you wouldn't be a reporter in the big city. True, she said with a laugh. But sometimes I wish I could give it all up for a good man. She looked at me meaningfully. I believe you would, I said. After a while, we went back inside. I lay on the couch, still uneasy about Mike's friends despite the DSS officer outside. Emily understood. "Don't make a habit of this, cowboy," she teased with a smile. I smiled back, grateful for her presence. I woke to the smell of bacon. "Rise and shine," Emily said, standing over me in a long t-shirt. "Breakfast is ready." I made my way to the kitchen table and stopped in awe at the spread. Pancakes, bacon, sausage, grits, toast, eggs, and cookies and gravy. She even remembered peanut butter for the pancakes. "A guy could get used to this," I said, grinning. Emily poured fresh coffee. "Hope you like it. It's been a while since I made breakfast for anyone." "It's incredible," I said after taking a bite. "You'll definitely get my mom's approval." Emily smiled. "Dig in, cowboy. We've got a lot to do today." "What's on the agenda?" I asked, savoring every bite. "First, we'll visit your family. Then Lisa's mom. I'd like to hear her perspective. If there's time, we'll stop by the cemetery." "Oh, and we need to shop. You're almost out of everything," she teased. I finished the meal, praising her cooking. Lisa hadn't made breakfast like that in years. "That was amazing," I said, hugging and kissing her cheek. "Go get ready," she said with a smirk. "And shave. You need it." I showered and shaved, thoughts of Emily swirling in my mind. In less than 24 hours, I felt myself falling for her, just like I had in high school. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Emily, now dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, grabbed her laptop bag, and we headed to my parents' house. The kids ran out to greet us as soon as I parked. I introduced Emily, and we all went inside. After explaining her plan, Emily asked to speak with each family member privately. While she interviewed Sophia and Ethan, Dad and I avoided difficult topics, talking about hunting, fishing, and soccer instead. Later, Emily spoke with my dad and mom while I played soccer with the kids. She joined us outside after her interviews, laughing and bonding with Sophia and Ethan until lunch was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a happy family again. After lunch, we said our goodbyes. Sophia hugged me tightly. "Daddy, if you don't ask her to marry you, I'll kick your butt," she whispered. I promised to think about it, my heart warmed by her approval. On the drive back, I asked Emily how the interviews went. "They went well," she said. "I know you have trust issues, so I spoke with everyone privately to get independent perspectives. It's not that I don't believe you. I just wanted them to speak freely." "I appreciate that," I said. "Learn anything new?" "Sophia said Mike had been making advances toward her," Emily said, her voice tight with anger. "That son of a cow," I muttered. "Your family loves you deeply," she added. They had suspicions about Lisa but didn't want to interfere without proof. If they'd known specifics, they would have spoken up. We pulled into the parking lot of Lisa's mother, Nancy's, apartment. "Do you want to talk to her alone?" I asked. "No," Emily said. "I think you should be part of this conversation." Nancy opened the door, moving slowly due to her health issues. Her husband's mysterious death years ago and Lisa's recent passing had left her isolated. "How are you feeling?" I asked, hugging her. "I'm fine, Jack. Thanks for asking," she said before turning to Emily. "Emily Parker, you're as beautiful now as you were in high school. Thank you for coming." We sat in her small living room, and I explained Emily's investigation. Nancy nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "What can I tell you?" Emily didn't hesitate. Mrs. Montgomery, Lisa, and Mike's affair lasted throughout her marriage. "You must have known. Why didn't you tell Jack?" Nancy looked down, ashamed. "Yes, I knew," she admitted. "I'm sorry, Jack. I should have told you. You didn't deserve this." "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Since the beginning," she said. "When you were in Okinawa, Mike practically lived with Lisa. They were careful when your family was around. I told her it was a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. If she wanted to be with Mike so badly, why marry me?" "I would have let her go," I said. Nancy sighed. "She loved you both in different ways. You were stable and dependable. Mike was exciting and wild. She didn't want to lose either." I shook my head. "Lisa had an affair on our wedding day, had 2 children with Mike, and plotted to kill me. Those aren't the actions of a loving wife." Nancy's voice softened. "I know it's hard to believe, but she did love you. at least at first. Over time, Mike controlled her. I warned her once, but she said I'd regret it if I told you. That's why I stopped visiting the kids. I couldn't face you knowing what she was doing. Did you know about her abortions? Emily asked gently. Nancy nodded. She told me. I warned her she'd get caught, but she shrugged it off. She said it was her choice, not yours. I told her to divorce you, but she just laughed and said she'd inherit everything soon anyway. Emily leaned forward. When did she say that? About 1.5 years ago, Nancy said, her voice trembling. I wanted to say something, Jack, but I was scared. Mike is terrifying. Nancy, did your husband know about this? I asked gently. I think so, she said, lowering her gaze. They were talking just before his accident. Her husband, a skilled mechanic, had died when his brake line mysteriously failed. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. It's all in the past now, isn't it? Nancy said softly. By the way, I don't blame you for not attending Lisa's memorial. I was hoping some of her friends would come, but it was just me and the priest. She dabbed at a tear. Thank you for paying for the cremation. I nodded. I noticed you had her cremated in her wedding dress. You cremated her in her wedding dress? Emily asked, raising her eyebrows. I told you I burned the dress, I replied. But I made sure she wore it, along with the wedding ring I gave her. It felt appropriate. Did you cremate the wedding ring too? Emily asked. Yes, but not the engagement ring, I admitted. Thank you for ensuring I got Lisa's IRA, Nancy said. It helped a lot. Emily looked intrigued. Lisa had an IRA? Yes, I said. When she died, it had $350,000. She also had a $200,000 savings account I didn't know about. I put it all in a trust for the kids' college. Interesting, Emily murmured, jotting down notes. Nancy, is there anything else you can share? No, I think you know everything now, Nancy said with a sigh. I'm sorry for how things turned out, Jack. I put my arm around her. It's okay, Nancy. Visit the kids anytime. They'd love to see you. We hugged her goodbye, promising to stay in touch. As we got back into the truck, Emily turned to me. You really cremated her in her wedding dress? It felt right at the time, I said simply. We drove to the cemetery and stopped at the columbarium where Lisa's ashes were kept. The granite plaque read, Lisa Montgomery, 1980 to 2023. At least you treated her remains with dignity, Emily said, mostly for Nancy's sake. If it were up to me, I'd have flushed her ashes down the toilet. Emily raised an eyebrow. Interesting that you used her maiden name. She didn't value our family, I said bluntly. They wanted me to write loving wife and mother on the plaque. I figured cheating strumpet or lying cow wouldn't fly, so I kept it simple. Emily placed her hand on my chest. There's still a lot of anger in you, isn't there? Tell me, Jack, did you ever mourn her? The truth hit me hard. I hadn't shed a single tear since Lisa was shot. Her lies and betrayal had destroyed my love for her. The shame of that realization brought tears to my eyes. Emily gently turned me to face her. Let it out, Jack. You need to release this before it eats you alive. I don't know how, I admitted, tears streaming down my face. Everything I thought I had was a lie. Emily hugged me tightly, her kisses soft on my cheek. She was my friend too, remember? You, me, Mike, and Lisa. We were the 4 musketeers. I hate what she became, but I loved her anyway. You did too, Jack. You married her, raised 2 kids with her. That has to mean something. You're probably right, I said, my voice raw. Damn right, cowboy, Emily said, smiling through her tears. I'm here for you, as long as you need or want me. Thank you, I said quietly. Emily patted my chest. Now let's go shopping. And what about dinner? How about Charlie's? Steaks and a live band tonight, I suggested. You're asking me out in front of your wife's ashes, she teased, kissing me lightly. She turned to Lisa's marker. Bye, Lisa. Your husband is asking me out. I whispered, bye, honey, to the plaque and followed Emily to the truck. At Charlie's, we enjoyed steaks and a couple of beers while watching couples dance. Want to dance? I asked, holding out my hand. Of course, Emily said, smiling. We danced the night away, 2 steps, waltzes, slow dances, and even some line dancing. During a slow dance, Emily kissed me deeply. "I love you, Jack Thompson," she whispered. "Always have, always will." "I love you too, Emily Parker," I said. Her lips trembled as she spoke. "Take me home and make love to me, cowboy, or I'll pounce on you right here." I grinned. "Let's handle this situation properly," I said in my best David Wayne impression. Emily giggled, grabbed my hand, and led me to the parking lot. "Take me home now," she purred. We barely made it to the garage before passion took over. Later, we lay in bed, her head resting on my chest. Just 36 hours ago, I was a broken man. Now, with Emily beside me, I felt whole again. "A penny for your thoughts," she said, looking up at me. I opened the nightstand and pulled out a small box holding my great-grandmother's engagement ring. Emily's eyes widened as I explained the ring's history. "This ring has been passed down for generations," I explained to Emily, holding the small box carefully. "It started with my great-grandfather during World War I. He proposed to my great-grandmother with it before shipping out. Over the years, it's been handed down to the men in my family when they found someone they truly loved." I took a deep breath, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "Emily, this ring symbolizes not only my love for you, but over a century of Thompson family history. I'll understand if you'd prefer a new ring, but this one, it means a lot to me." Emily's eyes welled with tears as she looked at the ring. "It's beautiful, Jack," she said softly. She paused, her voice catching. Yes, I'll marry you," she said, smiling through her tears. "I'd be proud to wear your great-grandmother's ring." But what?" I asked, tilting my head curiously. "There's one condition," she said, her smile growing. "Condition?" I repeated, my heart skipping. "Promise you'll cancel the vasectomy," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I want a house full of kids. Maybe one day we can pass this ring on to one of our grandchildren." Relief and joy washed over me as I slipped the ring onto her finger. "I promise," I said. "I want that too." We sealed the moment with a kiss, one full of hope and love, before spending the rest of the night celebrating our engagement. In Emily, I found everything I'd thought I'd lost: a partner, a friend, and a reason to believe in love again. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon. Emily was in the kitchen, cooking up another huge breakfast. "Rise and shine, cowboy," she called out, wearing one of my shirts as she flipped pancakes. The spread was as impressive as ever. Pancakes with peanut butter, bacon, sausage, eggs, and biscuits with gravy. "A guy could get used to this," I said, sitting at the table with a grin. "Better enjoy it while you can," she teased, pouring me a fresh cup of coffee. "I don't do this every day, you know." We ate together, laughing and talking about our plans for the day. Afterward, we packed for the trip to Dallas and showered together, which naturally led to another session of lovemaking. As we drove, I called the kids to share the big news. "Woohoo!" Ethan shouted over the phone. "That's awesome, Dad." Sophia's response was just as enthusiastic. "Good for you, Daddy. You've got a real winner," she said, her voice warm. When we told my parents, my dad was thrilled. "Welcome to the family, Emily," he said with a big smile. "Thanks, Dad," Emily replied, glowing with happiness. My mom beamed. "Have you set a date yet?" she asked. "Not yet," Emily said. "I have some things to wrap up in Austin first, but it'll be soon." After saying our goodbyes, we hit the road. As we drove, something Emily had said earlier lingered in my mind. "Long-distance relationships don't always work," I said. "Did you know Ryan Mitchell is retiring as editor-in-chief of the Daily Record?" she asked, glancing at me. "I didn't," I replied. "I sent my resume last week before we met," she said. "They want to interview me for the position. If I get it, I'll be here permanently." "And if you don't get it?" I asked, half teasing. She smiled, her confidence unwavering. "Then I'll quit the Statesman and move here anyway. No one else is in line for the job, though, and I already have ideas to improve circulation. I think it's a done deal." I admired her determination. "Sounds like you've got it all figured out," I said. "I like to be prepared," she said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "No matter what happens, I'll support you 100%. That's why I love you." I said simply. We stopped at the cemetery on the way, where I placed flowers at Lisa's marker. By the way, Lisa, I said quietly, Emily and I are getting married. Emily added, her voice steady, if the kids are okay with it, I plan to adopt them. We stood in silence for a moment before walking back to the truck. Do you really want to adopt the kids? I asked as we got in. Hell yeah, Emily said fiercely. They deserve a mother they can trust. Are you okay with that? Of course, I said, smiling. It feels right for all of us. The rest of the drive to Dallas was quiet, with Emily typing away on her laptop as she worked on her story. The next morning, we arrived at the courthouse early. By early afternoon, the jury had returned with a unanimous verdict. Mike sat stone-faced as the judge read the charges and the punishment. Guilty on all counts, with a recommendation for judicial execution. The courtroom was silent as the judge pronounced the sentence. Mr. Reynolds, I agree with the jury's recommendation. If any case warrants judicial execution, it is this one. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel struck sharply, marking the end of the trial. Afterward, my lawyer and I intercepted the officers escorting Mike. My lawyer handed him 2 forms. One relinquishes all parental rights to Ethan and Sophia, he explained. The other outlines the distribution of your estate. 1/3 will go to Nancy Montgomery, and the rest will be divided equally between trusts for Ethan and Sophia. Defeated, Mike signed both forms. Are you happy now? He spat. I will be, I said coldly. By the way, Emily and I are getting married, and she's adopting the kids. Enjoy hell. I didn't see Mike again until his execution. Later, I visited his grave once to ensure he was gone for good. Yes, I peed on it, but I didn't tell Emily. She wouldn't have approved. With Mike and Lisa behind me, I focused on building a future with Emily. Her story about my ordeal went viral, earning her a Pulitzer Prize and several talk show appearances. When she left The Statesman, they gave her a glowing recommendation, and the Daily Record welcomed her as their new managing editor. Under her leadership, circulation tripled. Our backyard wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair. Emily's parents came from Austin, and her father walked her down the aisle. Ethan was my best man. Sophia served as Emily's maid of honor, and the whole day felt like a family celebration. After the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Ethan hugged Emily tightly. Welcome to the family, Mom, he said. Sophia added, I love you, Mom. I love you both, Emily replied, tears in her eyes as she embraced them. My father handed us an envelope with tickets for a week-long Caribbean cruise. Thanks, Dad, we said in unison, laughing as we started our honeymoon. 10 months later, Emily gave birth to twins, a boy, William Frederick, named after my grandfather, and a girl, Ella Grace, named after Emily's grandmother. On their first birthday, I met Henry Caldwell, a local politician. You should run for Mike's old seat, he suggested. I shook my head. Thanks, but I've got 2 new mouths to feed. And besides, power corrupts. With Emily by my side and our family growing, I knew I had everything I'd ever need.